going to run through these slides from last week. It's familiar stuff. I mean, it really, really is. But we'll pop through them right quick. Then it's not but 17 verses tonight, so it won't take long to go through that with this. So the class last week was from Matthew 25. Even though you may have different views on how Matthew 24 breaks up, most everybody puts Matthew 25 as the second coming of Christ. So you got the three parables, if indeed the last one is a parable, the virgins or the bridesmaids, and the talents and the judgment. The two big points we emphasized last time was that of you don't know when Christ is coming. That's made very clear in 24 and 25 too, and be prepared. That's it. That's the two big things there. This key point we talked about that kind of sets the stage for understanding the parable of the virgins with the 5 foolish and 5 wise is that the custom was that the bridegroom would come to the bride's house sometime late in the evening, on up into the night even, with his attendants. And then when the shout was made that he's coming, of course, no street lights, no outside lighting like we got now, the bridesmaids would go out and with their lamps and light the way in for the bridegroom and his party to come into the bride's house for the festivities to begin. So if you understand that, then you see why the importance of the bridesmaids with their lamps and being ready, not knowing when he's coming. That helps explain it a lot. So they waited for the bridegroom and they would sleep, and we woke up, the shout, he's coming. Again, not knowing when, one of the points. Then the ones that had extra oil could fill their lamps, trim them, and be ready. And the ones that didn't have it had to go try to find some. While they went, of course, he came. So the idea of being prepared was the big key there. All were admitted. All were invited, but only those who were prepared were admitted to the wedding feast. So all could have entered, but only those who were ready. Then the talents. Each one received talents according to his ability. That's the key point through the whole thing, according to your ability. 5, 2, and 1. Talent is a weight of money. It's a measurement of money. A lot of money. If you look up trying to find how much is according to when it was written, what you're reading from. So I didn't try to put any money on it there. But here it represents more of a responsibility or an ability to get something done. The master brought them his money to take care of while he was gone. And they had to use their ability, each one according to his ability, to take care of the master's funds while he's away. 5 put his to work, he gave him 5 more. 2 put his to work, less ability, they put it to work and gained 2 more. And then the one who had 1 didn't do that. He went out and dug a hole and hid it, and master's money. Master came back after some unknown period of time, again, to be prepared, don't know when, and asked for a report. The one who had 5 reported he got 5 more. The one who had 2, he got 2 more. Master's pleased, exact same words used for both of them. But then the one who had the 1 came back and started making excuses about why he did not take his out and put it to work. Cast him into outer darkness with weeping and gnashing of teeth. So the summary was that we all have different abilities. We have to use our abilities we've been given based on how much ability we have, and return our goods to the master when he comes back. And we can work and gain additional abilities. And then the other thing I pitched in there was, can you imagine yourself standing before the judge making excuses? The judge making excuses. So the sheep and the goats, the Son of Man's coming in all his glory with his angels with him and sat on the throne of his glory. All the nations gathered before him, and there'll be a judgment that's going to occur. It's going to separate one hand and one the other. Sheep's on the right, the goats on the left. Those on the right, he's going to invite in. Come in, you blessed of my Father. They don't understand why they were chosen. He goes through and tells it. They said, when do we do all this to you? And he said, as you do it to the least of these, my brethren, you've done it to me. And then you turn around with the other side, the exact same thing. When do we not do this? When do we understand this? And yet you did not do it to the least of these, my brethren, you didn't do it to me. So the goats go away into everlasting punishment, and the sheep into eternal life. They were not punished for doing something wrong. They were punished for not doing. That's the big key to that one. So the choice. We got a choice to be righteous or not. We have a choice to do or not do. So, not everyone that says to me, Lord, Lord, to enter the kingdom of heaven. He does the doing is the key part from that. So that's where we are for tonight. It's quick. I said this last time. It's very familiar territory. Sorry, I'm dry tonight. So in John 13 tonight, we've got these chapters 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 that used to be in the old two-quarter curriculum, kind of all squished together. Now they're spread out a whole lot. So we got more time to spend looking at these chapters. John chapter 12 ends John's record of Jesus' public ministry. We mentioned that earlier in our class when we went through John 12. So that's the end as far as the public ministry of Jesus is concerned. 13, 14, 15, 16, of course, the prayer in 17 is time with the apostles. I think it's probably the 12, which would be down to 11. Of course, when Judas is gone, we'll talk about that in a minute. Maybe some other disciples with them. Different writers put it different ways, commentators. I really think it's the 12 that he's talking with here at this time. Chapter 13, they're at the supper with the 12 there. Chapter 13, verse 1 in the New King James, now before the feast of the Passover, when Jesus knew his hour was coming. The word before is in there. Other translations, someone say during or at the start of, some different wording there a little bit. Some of the scholars on this, John Wesley says, before the feast, that is on Wednesday before the feast, Wednesday of that week. Most everybody else puts it on Thursday, the same night as the betrayal. They leave that feast and go out. Jesus said, let us be now going. We'll get that later on. And go out across the Kingdom Valley to the Garden of Gethsemane on Thursday night. John Wesley backs it up since he says before the feast, he puts it back a day earlier, before the feast of the Passover. Most others don't do that. Kaufman said it occurred before the Jewish Passover. Truth Commentary and some others say it was the Passover eaten on Thursday night before his betrayal, which is the way I've normally understood it and normally have taught it when I've taught this class before. So it's Thursday night. That. One other point that comes into play a little bit here is that Matthew, I think it says they were at one point down in the chapter, they were sitting at they were reclining at table or sitting at table. The common way, from what we understand, for them to sit at a feast like this was sitting and with their feet all turned out away from the table, not like we sit with our feet under the table. Okay. So when Jesus starts to wash their feet here in a few minutes, you see what he do. He gets to their feet because they're all same thing with the woman who came in and anointed Jesus' feet with the oil. His feet would have been turned out so she could get to it, the feet, and do that. Something that we're not used to with our way of sitting. But if you go back to Exodus chapter 12, when they were eating the Passover feast, they were to be standing. Because when they were eating the Passover feast in Exodus, what's about to happen? They're leaving, okay? So they're standing, and the feast was eaten then, they think, standing because of that command back then. So would Jesus have been sitting or reclining at table if he's eating the Passover feast? Well, not if the law indicated he should be standing. So it's a confusion on that. Confusion to me too, but some of the things that the writers bring up when they start discussing this and when the timing of this supper and the Passover and all of it coming together with that. So the setting seems to be that the supper is finished. That may be questionable if you go down to verse 20, 30 to 23 through 30. They were leaning on Jesus' breast during the supper. talking there, is in that. So is the supper actually finished or not? It seems to be, because it's finished, and Jesus then gets up to wash their feet after the supper. So timing, a lot of things are a little confusing here. Not that you didn't get into it with your students probably, but just trying to nail it all down seems to be a little bit difficult in some of this. But the devil had entered Judas' heart to betray Jesus. He's not going to leave yet, but that point is made in one of the passages about it in John 13. I mean, Jesus, now you think back, it hasn't been long, a little while since we studied it, but chronologically, it hasn't been long since they were having the discussion about which one of them is the greatest in the kingdom. Remember, James and John wanted to sit one on the right hand, one on the left. Remember all that, and then who was to be the greatest? Well, keep that discussion in mind as we go through tonight's class, because it's kind of a key point to it here. So think about who's going to be the greatest in the kingdom, and Jesus says, well, let me show you who's the greatest. Okay, so this is a map of Jerusalem, Kidron Valley, you know where it is over here. Of course, across to Gethsemane, back out to Bethany that way. This up here is the Temple Mount area, and it's generally thought that the place where the Passover was in the upper room was down in, and this map's going to show it better. You got the orientation there, back over here. So don't know that, but that's most every map you find will have it down here with a question mark stuck on it. That's where the upper room was, just for relative. But Jesus gets up and takes off his outer garments, girds himself up, the towel, and starts to wash the disciples or the apostles' feet here. This is normally done by the lowliest of the low servants. It's not a job that just anybody would normally have, particularly the master of the house. He just would do that. If he had servants, they would do the washing of the feet. And it was a common thing because of the dusty, dirty, walking on the roads and things like that, and the open sandals that they wore all the time. So to wash your feet was a normal type thing to do, but not by the master. It would be done by this lowly servant type thing. But now it's being done by the master. That's the point Jesus got going to drive into them as he goes through this. So as he comes around washing their feet, when he gets to Peter, Peter says, no, you're not going to wash my feet. Peter's like, recognize you are the master and I'm the servant and you're not going to wash my feet. And Jesus said, if I don't wash your feet, you don't have any part with me. Well, he says, then wash all of me, not just my feet, wash my hands, wash my head. And Jesus makes a comment then, if you bathe and you're clean, then all you need is to get your feet washed, because that's what gets dusty and dirty walking the road. So that's how he kind of rebuked Peter with that and put it back. So Jesus finishes washing their feet, puts his garment back on, and sits down. And now the lesson comes. So he asks, do you realize what I've done for you? And he's not talking about just, I made your feet clean. That's not the point at all. Do you realize what I've done for you? You call me your master. And you're right, I am your master. So they're letting that sink in a little bit. He said, I've given you an example to do as I have done. Now, he didn't mean everybody get up and wash everybody else's feet. That's not the point. Be servants to one another. That's the point he's getting to. Who's the greatest in the kingdom? Not the one sitting on my right hand or my left hand. That's not the greatest. The greatest is going to be your servant. Okay? The whole lesson, and you got to think about how you're going to get this across to your students. The lesson here is humility and service. And we're going to try to talk about those two things as we go through the next few minutes. We'll have probably some time at the end to talk about it a little bit. I turned the microphone off for Carla and Tiffany. They both spoke up last week after I turned the microphone off. Okay. Humility and service. That's the 2 points we'll get to in this tonight. We'll go jump down to verse 17 to get this point, and then we'll back up and talk about something else a little bit. Jesus said, if you know these things, blessed are you if you do them. So it's a difference in just knowing something to do and then doing it. You're blessed if you know, you know them, but blessed if you do them. And you wonder, okay, they've been with him, Jesus, for 3 years or 3 years plus now. Have they had any lessons so far about humility and service? I mean, you would think surely that's come up somewhere along the way. But he's driving it home here so heavy in this sample he's doing for them here. So, question is this our problem? Do we know but don't act? Do we know what we should be doing, but we don't do it? Do we limit our service to our group? I'm not talking about our group in the congregation. I'm talking about our group within the congregation. Okay, do we limit ourselves in what we do? Or are we open to doing for everybody? Or we just know we should do it, we just don't do it? That's the question we got to deal with first here. Knowing and doing. So now, back up to verse 12. He said, do you know what I've done to you? Why would he ask that question? It's like a teacher trying to emphasize his point. Think about you and your children. You tell them something. Do you understand what I've said to you now? Okay. Do you understand this? It doesn't seem like he waited a long time for a reply. Well, if he had, Peter spoke up and said something, right? But the way Peter was. And the point is not necessarily you ought to get on your knees and washing each other's feet. That's good. You should do that. If I just did for you, done for you, then you should do that. But the point encompasses a lot more than that. It's not just washing each other's feet, although that's part of it. And we're going to try to see that here in a minute. But then you say, or we might say, oh, but I'm so much more important than so-and-so. I mean, I got to wash their feet. Anybody ever had that thought? Who's the greatest in the kingdom? Service, 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 service. Let me say this right quick. We've got some folks here who are so good at this. We got some folks here that will set themselves aside to do for others. I know we do. I hear about it. I see it. Whatever. It's time to get not just 8 of us sitting in here to think about this, but you've got to convey this to your children and your classes and get them to start thinking about it all the way up. Service. It's not that I'm more important than so-and-so, I won't do that. He needs to be washing my feet. What's the point? Verse 15, it says, I give you an example that you should do as I have done to you. Yeah, you should wash each other's feet because none of you is any more important than the other. But take it beyond that and just a overall lesson in lowliness, humility, and service. Okay? So in our everyday life, the question is, what do we use an example for? He said, I did an example for you to see. How do we use an example? Well, if you want to teach one of your children how to use a measuring cup, okay, you go to the cabinet, you get a measuring cup out, and you fill it half full of water and say, this little mark right here, this is half a cup. You know, you show an example, and you could be doing that for how to cut grass, how to make your bed. We do things to show people how to do things. And Jesus says, I've done an example for you. I've showed you how to be humble. I've showed you how to serve one another. Not with an attitude of, I'm the greatest in the kingdom, with an attitude of humility and service. Jesus, I set the example for you to follow. Truth Commentaries said that since Christ showed subjection and service, they, the apostles, were to assume for themselves the duty of mutual subjection and service to one another. That's a comment they made about it. All right, some verses. Philippians 2:7. He emptied himself, taking the form of a servant. We're speaking about Christ. He came as a servant. Albert Barnes, his commentary, says he descended to the lowest conditions of humanity. Think about where he was and who he was before he came to this earth. He was the creator. Okay? Question Genesis chapter 1. Who was there? Without him, nothing was made that was made. Okay? Came down, humble carpenter, had no place to call his home. All those things that we know about him. Humblest of positions. So the question is then, does this describe me? Or do I consider myself a step above? How lowly am I? I'm willing to bring myself down. I don't mean literally down, but in my mind. Isaiah 42, speaking of Jesus, prophecy about the Messiah, says, behold, my servant who I uphold. Actually calls him there in this prophecy, a servant type thing. Mark 10, Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve. So over and over we see places where it talks about Jesus being a servant. He's a master. He is our master. He's our Lord. But he also came to serve. John 6, I did not come from heaven. I came down from heaven not to do my own will. Who's he serving? In that case, well, he's serving the Father. Subjection to him. And then along when Matthew 20, Jesus called them to himself and said, you know, the rulers of the Gentiles lord over them, and those who are great exercise authority over them. Yet it shall not be so among you. Whoever desires to become great among you, let him be your servant. Who desires to be first, let him be your slave. Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and give his life a ransom for many. So we're trying to drill in service. Yes, ma'am.
I was thinking about this a lot. I think one thing that we can try to do is, I'll use my kids as the example. They have an easy time serving others that are not in their group of three. But when I ask them to serve their brother or their sister, it's like pulling teeth. And to me, that's the core, right? Because serving someone that's, an older person or that's outside,
sure,
you feel good about that. It doesn't, so you're still self-serving, right? That's the point that, So we need to think about that when we're talking about service. That it's not always it is everyone.
Sure.
But there's this concept of you have to serve because you need to humble yourself. You should want to serve someone else.
So
right?
Why do you think he used this core set of apostles
exactly.
to make this point, right?
Here,
yep.
right?
Yep. And we've been together all this time, right?
Right.
And you think some of you are better than the others and whatever, but no, you're not.
Right. I think that's exactly what, so as as we're teaching this, and I haven't taught it that way before, but it's making me think about all the examples we're going to use of the challenges that we might give them or something like that, is to think about your siblings, your mom and your dad. That's hard. That's hard to have that mindset of serving in that group of people. It's just
That's not what brothers and sisters normally do for each other, right?
Correct.
No. At least I worked back in my day.
Yeah, it still is.
Things haven't changed that much. Jesus makes some points here about servitude, about being a servant. A real servant does not seek service for themselves. I'm not trying to get you to serve me, but I aim to serve others. That's what a servant does. He's not served, he serves. So you don't promote your own will, and you don't promote yourself. I am not somebody special. I need to be a servant just like anybody else does. I found this and modified it a little bit. Successful servants serve where they are. I can get my point here in a minute. All we have to do is look at the person next to us. What if go way, back to your point, what if go way outside and find all these people need to serve? No, let's start. Apostles, start with yourselves here. Okay, it's kind of the same, you're getting your point here. So develop a servant mentality. Wherever you are, whoever it is. Have a determination to serve. Understand that you're imitating Jesus when you do this, when you serve. That's a big key point. Okay? Start serving where you are. Start within your group, within your circle, and then expand it out from there. I pulled this out of one of the older lessons, but I think it ties right into it. Jesus said in Matthew 16, talking about following me, deny yourself, take up your cross and follow me. You desire to come follow me. I mean, it's a choice we make to come follow him, right? But here's the point. To do that, you've got to deny yourself. So I have to give up everything I want for myself, set myself aside, and what I want aside, and I just take all the ones out of there and block them out. Okay? I'm denying myself. Then he says, take up your cross and follow me. And that doesn't mean a lot to us sometimes. But the Romans use crucifixion a lot for their punishment. Remember what Jesus had to do with his cross that he couldn't do, had to get some help with it? So whether you're carrying the entire cross, or the argument, some they just carry the cross beam and they use the standing part all the time, whichever, doesn't matter. Okay. The idea of seeing someone carrying their cross, and you look at that person and you know what's happened to them. Okay. Jesus said, take up your cross. Why? You're crucifying yourself. You're putting yourself to death. You come follow me. I think it fits, that slide fits really well what we're trying to talk about tonight. So the bottom line, I give up service. Okay? I would do anything for anybody here. Really? Would you? Go get on your toenail, on your knees and trim somebody's toenails? Kind of gross you like, right? You ever see my toenails, you think it's bad. You're going to clean their bathroom and their toilet because they're sick? Now, Tiffany might clean Harrod's because they're buddy, you know. Who is the they here? You're going to clean their bathroom because they are sick. Who's the they? So, would you do it or do you do it? That's the question. Oh, I would. And if I needed, if I was needed, I would. There's needs out here.
I like one of the things you said where you said serve where you are. And of course, that goes back to what I was talking about with, that if you start to have that mentality of serving wherever you are, then think about what that does as far as allowing God to shine through you no matter where you are. Because if you find yourself in a situation that someone is in need of service out in the world, and you already just have that mentality, then you're going to jump in and serve. You're not going to think twice. And then that is letting your light shine. The light
shine and glorify your Father who is in heaven.
So
exactly.
It all is the building blocks so that concept of serving no matter where you are, having that aim to serve, and not question, well, somebody else will do it, or what. I mean, just having that mentality to do that, I think, is a really good lesson for ourselves.
I think we've all of us got the mentality. I just question myself sometimes, do I do what I ought to be doing? Okay. Yes, ma'am. Sure.
I'm thinking about something Judith said earlier about getting the kids to do it for siblings. Maybe we need to think of the serving part, and I can't do something that costs me nothing. We have biblical examples of that. Maybe we are thinking of it differently. Maybe we need to think it's got to cost me something. It might be my pride, cutting somebody's toenails. It sure needs to be my time, because I wonder sometimes if
You take up your cross.
we're thinking I'm going to get something out of this, like I feel good because I've done this and look at me, I've helped. If we're not thinking of it wrong because it needs to cost me something.
That's exactly why I think the kids, I mean, I'm all over this because this lesson could not have come at a better time. But it just drives me up the wall if I get from my children when I've asked them to do something for their sibling, right? And I stopped all three of them the other day, and I looked at Allie and I said, if I had asked you to done the same thing for Miss Tate, is that how you would have reacted? And I mean, the looks on their faces, it shocked me how it kind of slapped them upside the face when I gave them each an example of someone that they care about that's outside of our family. They care about how that person thinks about them. It's a big deal. And then they were like, it made a difference. And I'm like, wow, I don't understand why you don't think about each other that way. And that I think you're right.
Because we're comfortable.
Because we're
comfortable.
Yeah.
And we're comfortable with our group and our same little group of people.
Mm-hmm.
But I just wonder if we need to think about it needs to cost me something. Even if it's just my pride, okay, I'm stepping out of my comfort zone and doing something it needs to cost me something.
Yeah.
Good point. I think I'm about finished. Yeah. So, how are you going to teach your students about service? We've already kind of started here. We got 5 minutes left, roughly.
I wonder if we need to stress that it's not about what it does for me.
Yeah.
Service is all about the other person, not how I'm going to feel good because I did whatever. I mean, I think the little people can get that. It is not about me. It's about them. And what I think might be serving might seem like a good idea to me, but it might not be best suited for this person, but I thought of it and I'm going to do it because it makes me feel good. I think we just got the wrong idea a little bit.
Yeah, that doesn't mean you're not going to feel good when you do it, but that's not my point, right? Sure.
I know when our kids were younger and all at home, if they did something to one another, then they had to do an act of service, and it might have been making the bed, which was just, had to make 2 beds that morning, but they had to do some act of service when they wronged their sibling, and it had to cost a little something.
Yeah.
I think too, an important part of the whole service and humbling. Erin said it one day, and I was like, "Oh, that's smart." To tell her kids, "You are important, but you are not the most important." And that's something that I was like, "That's good to drill in you." I mean, everybody's important, but there's something higher.
It's like the lowliest servant washing the feet, right?
Yeah.
But here's the master doing it.
Yes, and that's just stuck with me, and that's something that that we need to teach our children, because we're so wrapped in today with everything and all the technology and everything and busy lifestyles. They tend to think that they deserve everything. It's none of it. They don't have to earn it. Like, they just want it. And it's probably been that way all along. But as my kids are getting older, it just seems like that's just
No, and I'm going to get off the subject. I don't mean it that way, but years ago, first place got a trophy, second place got a trophy. You didn't have 30 trophies. I mean, not like everybody's got now. So it's like everybody getting a reward.
Yeah.
You got a reward when you earn that. You earn that reward type thing.
I guess what I mean by this, that it needs to cost me
Yes.
something, is when we think about and we teach the kids what Christ did for us, it cost him something.
Yeah.
It cost him something big.
And it costs God something big.
It cost God something too. And I think that's a concept kids can get.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
I think
I like that idea of making them make up the other one's bed if they do something. I mean, that's.
Yeah. Depending minimum of what the, you know.
Yeah.
I was gonna add to what Tammy was saying, well, kind of like everybody is kind of saying, but we cannot unhitch the humility to the service, because there's kind of another side to this, is you can be busy and be the one that is doing everything. I'm doing everything, and I am serving everybody, but it's not from motivation or perspective of glorifying Christ.
So
I realize how great He is, and it's motivating me to display and show His love and service to others, to draw them to Him. And so we can very easily think, as long as I'm doing something, that we've got to really stop and look at our motivation, because we can actually be damaging in the other way. And, to stop and ask ourselves, are we feeling the need to go and tell everybody what we're doing?
Oh, you get your praise now.
Or I'm so tired, let me tell you about all these things I'm doing, or I'm the only one doing all this. And those services, they mean nothing.
I think
once you've unhitched it from humility.
another thing that we as adults need to think about too, and that is drawing others into our service circle. We got a lot of people here who do a lot of stuff for others. But those who aren't doing for others need to be encouraged to get involved. The best way to do that is like Gary Fisher used to about setting up Bible studies. I mean, he would get one started and he'd take you to go Tracy Lab. He would say, okay, come go with me next week to this study. And about the time you were with him about twice to that study, he said, I've got another one tonight. You take care of it. I mean, he would suck you right into it and get you going there. And perhaps we need to think about somebody's being busy. Let's draw some more people.
So maybe our service at that point would be stepping back and let somebody
Right.
else
It is.
learn the ropes in that service, because then you've got more people working for the cause of Christ.
And you're teaching them how to be of service. I'll give you an example. I watched you do it. Now, your time, okay?
Well, and this, it looks like it needs to be taught. Jesus had to teach his disciples. You would have thought they spent all that time with him, they would have had a clue that he had to teach this lesson.
3 years?
It must not be something that's going to come real easy to us.
Sure.
We've got to practice it. We've got to work on it.
Oh, at work. It's easier. Let me do it myself. I'd rather do it than have to take time to show you how to do it. Don't work that way. Like, I'll make it to bed 3 times faster than the kids can, right? And you're 80 years old, you're still making a bed up for them. You got to teach them how to serve.
You don't get fed in my house.
Bad example. You got the point, okay? Yeah.
The humility part is so incredibly huge, because it goes back to that costing you something. When it's all said and done and you did something to serve somebody else, you have to know that you're done. Like you know what I mean? Like, and kids run their mouths. I mean, adults do too, but I'm just saying that's a part of it. They need to know that if you may be going through the motions, you may be doing, that if you can continue to work on that, I think you can, if you're not just naturally a humble person, that humility can come, because eventually you're going to be truly challenged to serve someone in a way that it costs in a way.
It does cost you.
Right? And then you're going to find yourself knowing, I have to do this. And then you're going to eventually walk away from that and you're going to go, wow, okay. And so it's just this whole learning process. And I think the fact, that this example is given to us is just amazing, because it shows us that the human beings by nature are not servants, and B, probably not humble. We're just not. And we have to work on it.
I think it's about time. One more quick point. I don't know how it works in your book. I didn't go back and look at the book there. But we just had last class, Matthew 25. Why were the people welcomed in to the kingdom? I was hungry and you fed me. I was naked and you clothed me. All these things are service items. So if you've got that, if that's the way it is arranged in that book, if you taught Matthew 25 last class, it's an easy link to put Matthew 25 right into this one. Easy. Okay.